Hello and welcome to my channel. In case you're wondering, in observance of Veterans Day, I am wearing my Navy hat. I am a veteran. If you've seen my other videos, you know I served in the Navy, and so therefore I always like to bring out my military hats around Veterans Day. So the story for today is something that happened to me, but it's not necessarily a how I handled it type of story. It's more of a just to talk about something that may be on other people's minds, and if you know somebody who feels this way, then maybe you can direct them to this. And what am I talking about? Is something that happened to me. Now, I want a disclaimer: the person that made the comment or did whatever, nothing against. She is a wonderful, beautiful person, but she just thinks differently than I do. And oddly enough, I actually used to think the way that she does. So the story is this. I was somewhere with my dog, with my service dog Cotton, and this person, and she's not a stranger by no means, asked me if her dog can play with my dog. Now, her dog is really small and really cute, older, and she's actually asked me this a few times. And a few times, of course, I've said no. As a service dog handler, no, my dog cannot play with your dog. But this is now like a third time or so. And again, she's not a stranger, and I felt bad. So I said, sure, go ahead and, you know, your dog can play with my dog. Now, of course, her dog being a little older, her dog was not as, wild, the little rambunctious as Cotton can get when she is off duty or playing or whatnot. So when Cotton was trying to play with her dog, or was her dog was trying to play with Cotton got a little, excited and everything. And then she tried to pet Cotton, and of course, all that excitement, turned right into her, and she was really excited. And that is one of the things I am still trying to work with Cotton, because she loves people. Now, she doesn't just approach anybody. She doesn't go up to people. She doesn't look for attention. However, when she is given permission to, say hi to somebody, she gets a little overly excited, and she, does a little puppy paw thing, and everybody absolutely loves it. So what happened was, when she did that, I stopped her. Cotton, of course. I stopped her. I said no. I corrected her, and she, of course, she settled. And she said, no, it's okay. It's okay. And I said, no, actually, it's not part of her training. What I'm trying to do is make sure she doesn't get overly excited when she sees people. And she said, oh, she must be miserable. Now, again, I don't remember if those were her exact words, but it was something along those lines. And I left it alone, because, like I said, I actually used to think that. I thought that a trained dog was a miserable dog, because, hey, you're a dog, you want to run around, you want to play, and you're not allowed to do anything. Now, what I'm about to say next, if you are offended by kids being compared to dogs, you might as well just stop watching now, because yes, I am about to compare kids to dogs. So when I didn't know any better, just like her, I thought the same thing. I always thought a trained dog is miserable. There's no way they can be happy. Now, fast forward 20 years later, because I've had dogs all my life. Fast forward 20 years later, I am now married. I have kids, and I don't have a dog during that particular time period of my life, because it was just a little too much. I had a business. I had my career in law enforcement, my husband, kids. It was just a lot. So, of course, my husband and I were very strict with our kids, especially in public and things like that. We would go to restaurants, cruises, airplanes, airports, and have perfect strangers coming up to us, complimenting us on how well behaved our kids were. We like to do a lot of things that are not typical for people around our age, more of the older crowd. So, and we've always taken our kids everywhere we go. And we would have older people coming up to us and complimenting us. They said, I didn't even know there were kids here. And, and at first it was like, that's kind of weird. Like, I didn't think our kids were that well behaved, because I, maybe had to correct them a couple of times and, things like that. But to just have strangers consistently, not just once or twice, but consistently telling us about how well behaved our kids were, I started to, you know what, let me notice other kids, you know. So when I started to notice how crazy and rambunctious parents allow their kids to be, I understood. Now, again, I'm not talking bad about anybody. Everybody raises their kids however they want. We just are how we are. So then I understood the value of having a well-behaved, you know, child. You know, we could go anywhere with our kids and it was never a problem. It was never a complaint. It was never anybody with issues because our kids were there. You know, things like that. I understood the value of a well-behaved kid. Fast forward another 20 years or, you know, 10 years. We got a dog, and with less than a week of having our dog was immediately in training. Within a month, she was potty trained, you know, and then she was obedience training, task training, all of that. And before she really got to the point where she actually listened, we had to leave her home. We had to leave her home because, you know, at that time I actually didn't even know the law as far as the ADA law and the fact that Florida actually considers a service dog in training and gives it the same rights as a fully trained service dog. But even with that, I just didn't want that type of, you know, negative attention or anything like that. So we used to have to leave her home. She was miserable. I often cried on my way out the door because I can hear her crying and scratching at the door. She was miserable. Ever since she was trained, even before she started tasking, she was still a service dog in training. We could take her because now she listens. She's more obedient and she is a lot happier. She does get a lot of downtime because, as I said in one of my other videos, it's not like I go out often. And she does get to play with my kids, you know, because obviously I can't play with her in that manner. But I do feel that she is a lot happier. So now that I know better, I no longer think that way. Like I said, I stopped thinking that way with my kids being so, you know, well behaved, especially as toddlers. They weren't running around crazy, you know, touching and grabbing and yelling and screaming, and they know better than to talk to us the way I see some of these kids talk to their parents. But as I said, you know, not knowing, I'm not even mad at her because, again, when I didn't have any kids and I didn't know any better, I had the same thought, like, trained dogs are miserable. But I think that trained dogs are actually happier because now you can take them to places, even if they're not a service dog, obviously not non-pet friendly places, but you can take them to pet friendly places. When you have such a rambunctious dog, you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to take them nowhere. And then they're home alone, they're miserable. And then when you get home, your house is destroyed. So again, do I think that a trained dog is miserable? Absolutely not. I think that a dog that is not trained is probably more miserable because, and even its owner, because you don't want to take them anywhere and then you got to deal with it. You love them, but you don't want to deal with it. So that is my take. I would love to hear what you think. Please write in the comments if you agree with me or if you still feel that, hey, no, a dog that's allowed to do whatever they want and just be dogs and be free is more happy than a dog that is trained and told to, you know, don't do this, don't do that, and behave in public and things like that. What do you think? Also, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you.